Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this Indiana Board of Animal Health webinar. Today, our speaker will be presenting on technical large animal rescue. My name is Dr. Caitlin Macy, and I am the District 9 Field Veterinarian with the Board of Animal Health, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Today's speaker is Dr. Jodi Lovejoy. Dr. Lovejoy graduated from Purdue University with her veterinary degree in 1993 and practiced veterinary medicine until '95 when she joined the Indiana State Board of Animal Health. She serves as the District 8 Field Veterinarian, Animal Welfare Specialist, and Director of the Commercial Dog Breeder and Broker Program for BOA. Dr. Lovejoy is currently a resident in the American College of Animal Welfare Diplomate Program. Dr. Lovejoy is trained in technical large animal emergency rescue. She has provided training on best practices in large animal emergency rescue. She is the BOA representative for the Indiana Traffic Incident Management Effort, which is a group of private and public sector partners that work to find best practices for the safe and efficient mitigation of traffic incidents. Dr. Lovejoy has provided training to these members on livestock behavior, handling, and best practices for roadway incidents involving livestock. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. We will have a question and answer session at the end of Dr. Lovejoy's talk. You are currently muted. If you think of questions that you have during the presentation, please type them into the chat section, and we will try to address as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Additionally, you are able to receive continuing education credit for this webinar if you're a veterinarian or vet tech. If you have signed in on Teams with your name, we will send you a certificate to your email address. If you called in, please email us to let us know that you joined, and we will send you your certificate. So go ahead and please take it away, Dr. Lovejoy.
Hello, everybody. We're going to just go ahead and dive right in. So we're going to be talking about swimming cows, upside down horses, and pigs walking themselves to market. All things we typically don't want to have happening in our world. We're going to start with a general overview of technical large animal emergency rescue, or TLAER. You may also see it listed, the acronym is TLAR. Go through some potential potholes, then real world scenarios where I'll dive into more details, and then preferred techniques. So what is large animal extrication? It is removing agricultural animals from hazardous situations. It can involve traffic accidents, fires, flooding, ice, mud, running at large, and anything else animals can get into that they can't get out of without help. Animals have 24 hours a day to find things to get into, and they are pretty good at it. So we're going to go over ways to help them get out of these situations by using preferred extrication methods. This can help diminish any additional injury to animals, and also be sure that we're putting human safety as a top priority when we're dealing with our livestock species. So what can happen? A personal vehicle or tow trailer with personal livestock is in an accident. A professional hauler with multiple animals is involved in an accident. And in the case of professional haulers, it can be any type of agricultural species, from chickens to hogs to horses and cattle to bees. Animals can be minding their own business in their own pastures, and a sinkhole can open up and the animals fall into it. They can get down into ravines, in particular, say with our riding horses and going to state parks or whatnot, they can get themselves in trouble there if they get off the trail. Animals getting stuck in mud, and water and ice entrapment. When we're working with large animal rescue, we want to utilize the Incident Command System, or ICS, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in a moment. Many talents are needed. Veterinarians, veterinary technicians on scene to assist with the animals. Police and fire each have their own responsibilities in any type of major incident. may need to have emergency medical services if there are people who are injured or need care, and knowledgeable large animal handlers. So all these people need to come together and form a team to be able to effectively and efficiently deal with situations involving animals. We do want to prioritize human rescuer safety, so we want to keep ourselves safe as we're going into it, and also we want to take care of the fire and police personnel who may or may not have knowledge of livestock behavior. So we want to keep an eye out for them, and then take care of human victims, and then we'll take care of animal victims once the people are taken care of. Want to use the simplest techniques possible, so keeping it simple and only ratcheting up to higher levels when simple techniques aren't available or going to be effective. This is information on incident command training that you can find. These are all free online courses. You can go to the FEMA.gov site. If you don't already have a student ID with FEMA.gov, it's free to sign up. You simply register and they will provide you a student ID, and then you can take the courses here listed from ICS 100 all the way down to the ICS 11A on the FEMA website and get credit for those. Again, there's no cost for these trainings, and it's online, so you can do it at your own pace and at your own time. Also want to make you aware that the Indiana Board of Animal Health has online training also available, and you can see the website there where you can go in and learn about preparing to deal with animals in disaster situations. I'm going to talk about running at large. So this is one of the simpler items depending on the attitude of the animals. So animals that have gotten out of their primary enclosure. So there are typically two ways to deal with these animals, and they're called pull and push. So pull, as you can imagine, you can see there, is enticing the animals to follow you to where we want them to go and where we can get them contained. Especially for animals that are used to being fed grain, in particular when grain is being dumped out for them. They may be enticed by putting grain in a bucket if you're short on grain, throwing anything that rattles in a bucket that kind of sounds like grain and rattling the bucket. You will work short term to get them to follow you. When you start with this process, it's good to already have an area set up for them to go into where you can close them off and get them contained, because they do learn pretty quickly, especially if you're just using rocks or whatnot. They learn pretty quickly that they're not going to get any food, and they'll disappear on you. They'll decide to go elsewhere. The push method is then handling animals from behind and using proper techniques based on the species to move around behind the animals and basically theoretically push them forward. So we're not clearly actually touching the animals to do this, but applying pressure gently behind them to get them to move forward. It's important with the push method that we stay just right on the edge of the animal's flight zone. We want animals to be as calm as possible. So we don't want to get right up in them and get them trotting or certainly running off, because once they start running, they forget about thinking and they become more of a danger both to themselves and to the general public. So just working right on the edge of the flight zone. And since we are veterinary professionals and also we have some commodity group individuals on, I'm going to presume that we understand the flight zone concept. Options for containment. This is PVC fencing. You can find it at pretty much any farm store. And in this case, they've added PVC piping to it and just use zip ties to connect the piping to the fencing, which provides support, keeps the fence more taut. And this is the idea with this is that you have a very long section of PVC fencing and would create as large an area around the animals as possible. The idea with containment isn't to get them up really tight, close in a very small area. The idea is just to get fencing around them and let them be happy. and giving them really as much room as possible, because the more room they have, the less likely they are to panic and try to test the fencing. And this, if we're using containment like this, clearly it can take a lot of people to do this. When you're on scene, you can use firefighters if they're not otherwise engaged, police officers. This is also a place where you might be able to use bystanders if they will listen to your directions, as far as just put a person on a pole and describe to them when they can move in or what you want them to do based on how the animals are handling the situation. So the idea is that you would start out basically in a large circle around the animals. And again, if you just get it closed in, so your fencing is met and overlap maybe slightly, and keep people there at the fence, because clearly this is not a strong fence. It should be enough to maintain animals who are calm to stay in there. And we'll go over some other ways to help occupy the animals while we wait on more permanent solutions. One of those ways is by providing the animals food when they're in a place we want them to stay. So getting hay out to them is going to take care of most of our livestock species. If you don't happen to have any on hand, again, farm stores tend to carry bags of hay that can be purchased and brought to the site and provided to the animals. If we are going to have to pull animals out of a situation, actually extricate them, typically we're going to need to use sedation because they don't do well with that type of handling. So it helps protect the animals. They don't start kicking around, and it helps protect people, again, because we're controlling the animal behavior. Something to note is that horses dehydrate very quickly. So if a horse is involved in any type of an emergency event, just assume that the horse is dehydrated and treat it for dehydration. In situations where we have deceased animals, it's a good idea to cover those animals so they're not visible to the public. And we do have to remember that everyone is carrying around a video recorder with them, with their phones. So if we can just make it as austere as possible and covering up deceased animals, so plastic tablecloths, anything along those lines. Also, we do not, if we do need to pull animals and physically assist them out of situations, we don't want to use mechanical winches to do that process because the winches can take a while to stop if something bad starts happening with the animal. So we want to use people power. We can enhance our power by using pulleys to move the animals. But then if something starts happening, the animal starts thrashing, or we see that there's actually something that could be injurious to the animal as we're moving it, we can yell stop, and everyone just stops pulling. We don't have that same thing if we have a powered winch. It can take a few seconds by the time we need to stop before the winch stops. And in that time frame, we could cause damage to the animal. So potential potholes in dealing with emergency events. For the veterinarians and veterinary technicians who are on, there is a specific code, an Indiana code that provides immunity to veterinarians and registered veterinary technicians in emergency situations. And so it's kind of long. I just highlighted a few things. It gives emergency, so any vet or vet tech on their own initiative who gives emergency treatment to a sick or injured animal is not liable in damages to the owner in the absence of gross negligence. So you do have to be operating within proper veterinary medical accepted care. Also, if a veterinarian conducts euthanasia, it is presumed that that was a humane act and it was necessary to relieve the animal of pain and suffering. I am not an attorney and I'm not providing you legal advice. I'm simply making you aware that this is what the state code reads. So you know this is out there. If you have any further questions on liability, I would suggest you consult with your attorney and get information from them about state codes and how you are covered. We also want to keep in mind about drug administration when we're on scene for food or performance animals. So there are drug restrictions aren't overlooked when there's an emergency response. So we don't want to medicate our food animals that are potentially on their way to a slaughter plant. We don't want to be medicating them if they're going to go on to a slaughter plant. And the owners of them may not want them medicated because then, of course, they would have to hold the animals then for the withdrawal period, and that's going to be more expense on them. And also thinking about performance animals, we have horse race courses in Indiana, so we also have to be mindful before treating that we're not treating a race horse or performance horse with a drug that, while legal in a pasture ornament horse, may not be allowed in a performance horse, just based on the racing or that board's decisions on what those animals are going to have. And as always, if you can, communicate with the animal owner before administering medications, again, so we can find out what's the purpose of these animals, how does the owner want to proceed, because it's going to be different in every situation. And that is another way where you can help protect yourself from any, help protect yourself from potential legal concerns. And go through some real world events. So in this case, swimming cows and horses. So I was trying to find some Indiana specific incidents, and there was a horse specific swimming horse incident. So in Indiana, so the horse snuck in here. Just assume that it's a red and white Holstein if you really want it to be a cow. So we can see in particular the photo on the, so it happens more than you would think. And what we humans think happen is that the animals, of course, are at large, they're running at large, and the pools are covered, and the animals do not understand that that cover is not solid ground. So they just go across it thinking it's solid ground, and then the cover collapses, and the animals end up going for a swim. And so on the photo in particular on the left with the firemen standing on the edge of the apron of the pool, I like that photo in particular because it reminds me to let you know that when you arrive on scene, whether or not you have ever dealt with whatever the situation is before, personally, everyone there is going to turn to you and say, "What do we do, Doc?" So whether you know or not, you're the professional animal person, and they're all going to wait with bated breath on what you tell them to do next. So when you arrive on scene, remember that you don't have to make a snap decision. Take the time to evaluate the situation, think about it, and then talk with the responders who have been on scene. They have had time to assess the situation while you've been en route, so they've had more time to digest what's going on. And feel free to ask them what some of their thoughts are on how you can get the animals out of the situation that they're currently in, and blend that with your medical knowledge and your knowledge of animal behavior, and come up with a plan together. So you're not alone out there, and don't let the pressure of showing up there and everyone turning and staring at you make you take actions before you're ready to make a decision, and that you've thoroughly evaluated the situation as best as you can, and you're comfortable with coming up with, here, let's try this. So we're going to go over the horse case. So this is a horse in a pool in Michiana, Indiana. WSBT reported it, and that's where the story and the photos on this horse come from. So the horse just walks into the pool. Again, there's a cover on the pool, walks in. involved firefighters from multiple agencies, also involved Nature's Way Animal Rescue, which is a technical large animal emergency rescue team in northern Indiana. The rescue took 4 hours, but the horse was uninjured, so they were able to get the animal out. So you see on the left, horse is in. This is what they find when they get there. So great. One of the first things in swimming pool situations is to pump the water out, if that is at all feasible. That way we don't have to worry about the animal drowning. It's also safer for the people who are going to be working with the animal. So pump the water out. If for some reason you can't do that, see if you can put some type of guard or fencing across so that the animal doesn't go into the deep end if the pool has different depths. On the photo on the right, what I would like for you to notice, and we'll talk about this here later, is the 2 people who are in the area with the horse are wearing hard hats. So to protect themselves, our firefighter here, he's got a toe strap. We'll talk about those momentarily. This would be a Nature's Way responder. She has on a vest, and on that vest is a D-ring, and to that is connected this rope. So she has a safety person out here. That person's entire job is to focus on her, and if something starts going haywire in the swimming pool, he can pull that rope and help her get out of that situation faster than what she probably could on her own. And when we're working with animals, we're going to be focused on the animals and not necessarily other things going on. So it's highly recommended to have a safety person whose only job is to watch you and the situation and let you know if something's starting to go south so you can get out of that situation. So Nature's Way, because they are a rescue operation, this is what they do. They actually had pre-made ramps available. So they set those up in the pool. We have what we would consider secondary containment on the horse, and that it's haltered and got our lead rope. Here's our Nature's Way rescue person, and they're going to walk the horse up the ramp. Now this is a fairly steep ramp, but you will see that they do have cleats on it. I don't know if a pig would be terribly happy about walking up something that steep, but for this situation, you're dealing with what you have in front of you and it's horse, and they were able to encourage this horse to go out. And with this, you can also see really well the safety line that the safety person has on her and able to pull her out if something else happens. A third person has gone in. He also has a hard hat on. So again, we need to think about responder safety as the utmost priority in these situations. And this is the horse once it's walked out of the pool. No injuries to the horse. So that was a successful rescue. It did take 4 hours, but that's okay. Everything came out fine. I am a little worried about the gentleman in the blue who's picking up the hind leg right there. That causes me stress, but I don't know what the rationale was there. He does not have a hard hat on, and yeah, is in not the best position, but everything worked out fine. We're going to move on to trailer accidents and look at the differences between cattle trailers and swine trailers. When we have trailer accidents, we want to keep the scene as calm as possible, which really we want to do at any time. But on roadways, we're going to have law enforcement, we're going to have fire responding, and they're going to have their sirens and their lights on. We want to get the sirens off because, as we know, animals are very sensitive to loud sounds, and that's just going to stress them out, which is not what we want to have happen. They can keep their overhead lights on for safety because we do have the motoring public may be around if the roads have not been shut down. We always want to put secondary containment in place before we open up any trailers. And by secondary containment, basically we mean some type of fencing around so that the animals we're not just opening up the trailer and letting them run down I-65. This is not helping the situation for us. So we need fencing in place. The animals don't come off the trailer until there's fencing in place. If you're dealing with horses, you may be able to simply have a lead rope on the halter before the horses are removed from the trailer. So again, depends on the circumstance. When the animals are stressed out, they've just been in something very scary, Once they sense daylight, they may charge out of whatever trailer they're in. So we don't want anyone standing in front of the opening when it's being opened. And we want to make sure that that opening is large enough that the animals can pass through without being injured. This is especially important if we're cutting the side of a trailer to allow the animals to come out, because those sides are going to be very rough and sharp, and the animals could be injuring themselves as they exit. So making it as wide as possible. And if there's time, so once the first group of animals come out and the others are contained within the trailer, perhaps getting some type of cover over the cut edges, like pool noodles slid over the edges before releasing the rest of the animals. So here we have on the left what the inside of a cattle trailer looks like. So more room to move around as far as for us humans, a nice ramp going up. But you can see that there's divisions within the trailer on both trailers. On the swine trailer, much tighter confinement, lower floors, so harder for people to get in there and move around. So there's a lot going on. It's not just a simple open trailer. And there may be times when firefighters need to cut multiple sections open, because if a trailer in particular goes over, it's going to twist and bind, and the gates aren't going to work properly. So that's really going to slow down extrication. But so keeping that in mind, that there's a lot more work than just opening up the back door and expecting everybody to walk out. It's also very important for firefighters to understand the type of material the trailer is made out of, because they need different types of saws based on the material of the trailer. So they have them check that out before they just grab their equipment, so they get the right piece of equipment when they're going in. Also with trailer accidents, you're not supposed to get in the trailer with an animal because we're in a confined space. So that's increasing the risk to yourself. Trying to use extension tools to sedate the animals, to be able to get, for haltered animals, to be able to get ropes on the halters, cutting any, again, for haltered animals, cutting any ropes that are have them tethered to the trailer. But because we're veterinarians and we want to get to things and we want to fix the problems, more than likely we actually are going to get in the trailer. So when that's the case, again, wear the hard hat, protect yourself, wear a high visibility vest, which hopefully first responders that request to see if they have an extra vest they can provide to you. Have sturdy shoes or boots. And again, as we mentioned before, have a safety person who's dedicated to watching you and what's going on in the environment around you, so they can give you a heads up as something's starting to change. I've already talked a little bit about cutting the trailers. If a section is cut out, it is not suitable for a ramp. It's not structurally strong. It's also very slick, so the animals don't like it. The animals will prefer to jump down, even if it's a little bit of a distance to the ground, versus using a slick ramp. They'll just refuse to do that. Cover the sharp edges if you can. Remove the cut section, again, when you're ready to just pull the whole thing away and have fencing in place. In trailer accidents, going back to, you may be dealing with a privately owned animal, or you may be dealing with livestock that's commercially owned or company owned. They should have, for company owned animals, they should already have an emergency plan in place. There should be in the tractor pulling them, should be the bill of lading, which is going to give the owner's name and contact information, so you can get a hold of them, tell you the type of animals being hauled and how many. It's important to know how many, because we want to count noses and make sure 5 or 6 aren't wandering around in the woods that are going to show up later, and that's kind of embarrassing when you're like, oh, yeah, missed those. So it helps out that way. We don't typically expect our truck drivers to know anything about the animals that they're hauling. They are truck drivers. They're not necessarily animal handlers. So we don't want to assume that the truck driver can be of assistance in the handling portion. So this happened in 2024 in Bloomington. a tractor trailer ran into, there was an accident between a tractor trailer and another vehicle. The result was a tractor trailer turned on its side, as you see here, on the roadway. And so fire department responded. They came up with, I think, a fairly unique solution to getting the pigs off of the trailers. They used their fire ladders, as you can see in the center here, to create a runway around to their vehicles, and they parked their vehicles to create basically a corral, a fenced-in area for the pigs. They were removing the pigs because it was hot. They had concerns about the animals overheating in the trailer. So this is a close-up. They also used the typical backboards that your emergency response, your ambulances are going to have backboards. Fire departments probably have backboards, which work just like sorting boards. So pigs are used to that. And we know that that's an effective way to move pigs around is with sorting boards. So using a backboard like a sorting board. We do have what appears to be either a severely injured or deceased pig present. In this case, 9 pigs died out of the 162 that were on the trailer. So these pigs are out. They also made a trough and provided feed to the pigs. So I'm guessing the trough is over here because everyone's headed that way. And they hosed the pigs down to keep them cool. This gives you a good idea of how thinking out of the box. So they've got their engines here, and then they have ladders along the bottom to keep the pigs from scooting underneath the vehicles. So to this point, if you're working with, when you're working with the firefighters and you need something done, it's better to just tell them what needs to happen than it is to say, I need this piece of equipment, we need this piece of equipment, this, that, and the other. So don't dictate the equipment, just let the firefighters know what it is that needs to happen and let them think through it. Firefighters are problem solvers and clearly can think outside of the box, and they also know what equipment they have. So you don't need to know the equipment, you just need to know this is what we want to have happen and let them work on solving that issue. So they're definitely someone, this is a team effort and you really want to lean on what their knowledge is and their thought processes because they're used to thinking outside the box. We get to upside down horses. So the person was trail riding, the horse threw them, and then the horse threw itself into this very narrow little ditch. And unfortunately, it's like also a brown colored horse and it's brown sand. So here's the horse's head. That's its nose. They have a halter on it. So we have a person minding the horse. They've got the halter. That's the horse's front legs. And then the horse's back legs are there. So it is basically on its back in a ditch. This would be a situation where you might bring in equipment so that you could lift the horse vertically, and you would use the legs, and we'll touch on that here in a moment, how to do that as safely as possible, and lift them straight up and over to solid ground and let them down. In this case, they couldn't get a helicopter in because of other circumstances, and they opted to dig out the area around the horse and allow the horse to roll over on its side and get itself up. So again, keep it simple, use the simplest techniques possible. So we've got all the firemen around with their shovels and ready to go and digging that horse out. And as per just animals, you know, it could have fallen 20 feet one way or the other, and there would not have been a ravine. There wouldn't have been a ditch, and we wouldn't be dealing with this. But of course, it chose just the perfect spot to end up in the ditch. This is that same horse. So he's rescued, and there was the horse did not suffer any injuries. So that's great, surprising and great in this case. Another horse upside down, not technically a ditch, it's just a steep slope, and there happens to be a fence there. If that fence wasn't there, the horse probably would have just been able to roll down and get up on its own. And so the firefighters are in there working to get this horse rescued. Some concerns about where everyone is standing. They have their hard hats on, but especially, you know, this gentleman here at the rear of the horse, and the legs, and they're right there. I am going to go with maybe the horse was very well sedated at this point, but still from a safety standpoint and appreciate them doing this work. But as we're thinking about this, having those legs may be restrained by someone else, so to decrease the likelihood of the horse kicking the firefighters there in the back. Just concerned because it is a confined quarters at this point. So if that horse started thrashing around, that could be a dangerous situation. And again, maybe the horse was heavily sedated at this point, and certainly would be something to be encouraged. And in this case, the fire department rigged up a harness system where they were able to pull the horse up from the ditch situation. So everyone working hard to get that taken care of. Again, open it up and say, this is what needs to happen, and let the firefighters figure out the solution to that. And it appears, I think they have a blanket here to try to cover and protect the horse on the downside. So that's one of the concerns. If you're pulling a horse, are you going to cause more damage here? They've got some cover there. They have the horse's eyes protected to help prevent creating more damage to the horse. And this is a horse after rescue. This horse was dehydrated. And of course, apparently it was raining too. So, you know, just a beautiful day to go out and do this stuff. That's when horses do these things. This is a cattle trailer incident in Indiana on I-64. In this case, the animal control officer had attended a training put on by Purdue and Board of Animal Health on technical large animal emergency rescue. He had taken it upon himself to gather resources and whatnot after that training. And then this occurred in his county sometime later. And so when it occurred, he already had his call down list of truck drivers and people who have trucks, who have drivers who know how to drive trucks and trailers, and temporary corral panels were all already established on his roster. And the farmers came out when he called them and set up a beautiful setup. So we've got this secondary fencing in place. So that was in place before they released the cattle, and they designed the fencing so that the cattle basically came off the down trailer across here and loaded right onto a waiting trailer. Worked really well. It worked so well that the insurance company actually contacted the animal control officer and congratulated him on the process, because they said that it was the lowest death loss they'd ever had in a trailer overturn. And they think it was because of the quick response. So setting these things up, these resources up ahead of time, again, working with the team aspect, we need drivers, we need knowledgeable livestock people, trailers, and equipment. And then these producers took the animals to their properties and held them for a few days while the insurance company and everybody was working out what to do to finish up with them. You are going to have deaths and trailer accidents. We do not need to remove the deads on scene. So you can right the trailers if the trailers are still roadworthy, haul it somewhere else and worry about taking the deads off somewhere else. And this goes to the traffic incident management that Dr. Macy mentioned. There are a multitude of things we want to attempt when we have roadways involved. And one of the biggest ones is to get the roadways back open. So we really want to keep commerce moving. Police officers in particular, like that's going to be one of their highest priorities. So understand if you're on a traffic incident, the police may be coming over and saying, how much longer is it going to take? How much longer? How much longer? They're not being rude. It's their job to get the roadway open. And we do know lots and lots of studies that if roadways are closed and there's a backup, that the chances of having a fatality accident in a queue go up the longer that there's a queue. So there's a multitude of reasons why they're asking that. And so just understand where they're coming from. So turkeys in 2016 in Salem, someone running loose, but they're turkeys, so they're not really running. So gathered them up. And again, with our corporations, with our companies, they have trailers available that they can dispatch. So getting their contact information, getting them contacted as soon as possible. They'll get trailers en route, but do expect it's going to take a couple of hours for trailers to get to wherever the incident is. So they sent trailers to pick up these turkeys. I have this slide in here. So they opted to move the turkey containers onto a flatbed and move them to an off-site location to then remove the turkeys from the damaged trailers onto other trailers and take them on to slaughter. Is this ideal? Not ideal, because we know we're probably going to be causing damage if the turkeys are still alive on the bottom, which they may not be at this point. Maybe causing damage, but it was getting the road open and just taking the entire situation together and deciding on the best option. The other reason I want to show you this is they attempted at first to put a chains on either end of the trailer and lift, and what they found is that the trailer started buckling in the center. So they put it back down, and they added then chains that were also connected to the center of the trailer and worked on getting the links and everything correct. So when they lifted, they were lifting from at least 3 points. So it was important with a trailer and something to know ahead of time if this happens in your area. And also the same situation happens with animals when we're lifting them, that if we just lift from 2 points on the animal, like the back, the butt end and the front end, the animals will collapse inward and break their back. So we don't want that to happen. And we use a stretcher bar to prevent that in animals so that we keep their backs as straight as possible. As we've talked about with livestock incidents, we want to have fencing in place before we release them. Deceased animals and non-ambulatory cattle cannot be used for human consumption. That can be a bone of contention on the scene. People who are not knowledgeable about our food safety requirements will be saying, well, they were fine, they were going to slaughter, why are we wasting this meat, this protein? They were fine, but we don't know that they were fine, and I won't go into all the details why they can't be used for human consumption, but just know they cannot, and explain that as politely as possible if someone is really bothered by the fact that the animals can't be processed for human use. Already talked about animal owner information. Deciding whether or not an injured animal is euthanized or kept for treatment is going to be up to the owner. For commercial situations, especially if the animals are insured, they may just say, hey, euthanize them and get them out of their misery, and then we don't have to try to medicate them and keep them around for months when they're ultimately going to be going to slaughter anyway. And as mentioned with the first cattle overturn that we showed, having a predetermined resources and list of resources really helps speed up care of these situations. Animal products, dairy products, if a tanker is spilling milk, then that tanker is considered contaminated. That milk cannot be used for human consumption. For packaged animal products and eggs, decision on what happens with that, if it's involved in a traffic incident, goes to the local health department. And if we do have a spill, IDEM should be contacted so they can start doing remediation if necessary for any nearby creeks and ditches. Then go into techniques. So most of these photos, the ones with the 1 asterisk, are from trainings put on by Technical Large Animal Emergency Rescue, Dr. Thomas and Rebecca Gimenez in 2008. So this happens to be a very well-trained horse. We have a toe strap, and you can get a toe strap again from farm stores. We want our straps to be very strong, so at least in the 2,000 to 3,000 pound rating, so 3,000 better than 2,000, even if we're just dealing with a 1,000-pound animal, because once they start struggling, they can really increase the force on that. In this case, we're using extension poles to lift the legs and pull the strap under the back legs. So we're keeping ourselves out of the way of the animal's most dangerous parts. And we're setting this animal up for a backward drag. So we're going to be pulling from the butt, so pulling away from the head. You can use it for overturned trailers or if an animal's down in a stall or in a narrow location. So we're basically going to floss the toe strap up under the animal's butt, and it is possible to do that, even though it seems like they would be too heavy, but it works. And again, our extension poles, to grab the loops on those, and we're going to pull them back through the back legs. Get them set up, put all of our firemen or volunteers, if there's people who want to help, on the end of the ropes, and they give a pull, and we can pull the horse backwards, or any livestock backwards. We don't want to use the animal's head as a pulling point because they need it for their own balance if we're wanting them to help themselves get out, and also because there's a high chance of causing some type of spinal cord damage, which is not what we're going for. Only use the legs if there's nothing else available. So again, the upside down in a ditch might be a situation where you would use the legs. And if you're lifting like that, then also being sure that you support the head, because we don't want the head to flap back. Again, we don't want to cause spinal damage. So putting a halter on, tying that to the lift mechanism so everything stays together. There is a way to use the legs where we dilute the pressure on them. It's called a Prusik loop. And you can ask your firefighters about setting this up. You have to know what a fisherman's knot is and that sort of thing. The idea basically is instead of putting one rope length wrap around a leg where the pressure is going to be extremely intense, we're going to be wrapping it multiple times. So instead of one rope around, it's more like 6 ropes around. You would put protective equipment around the leg as much as possible, and then put the Prusik loop on it, and then connect to the loop to pull the animal. For animals that are, say, down in a ravine or have anything that's steep, we can put on a forward assist. So we're using our toe straps again, putting it across where you put the cinch on a horse, dropping it over the shoulders, and then we're going to feed it through the front legs. In this case, we're putting one end loop through the loop on the end of the other. So it is set up like that. This does 2 things. A, it keeps the animal from slipping out of the harness, the loop, and also it gives you a lot more distance in front of the animal. So our responders are at a safer distance as they're bringing the animal up the hillside. Now, if this is, for a horse, this should work fine. Again, we've got the halter in place as secondary containment. If you were doing a cow or something that it just needed a little bit of assistance, you can also just run both ends between the front legs and have both ends coming out. And that way they're not connected together. So when you get the cow or pig or whatever out of the situation, you can just drop the ends of the loops and it'll fall off. The animal can walk out of it. So if you don't want to have to go back up to the animal after you get it on solid ground, you can go that route. A side drag, again, we're going to floss the toe straps up under the animal. We're going to put one up in the cinch area, one in front of the back legs. And in this case, they're showing a technique where they're putting them then going in between the legs and pulling. One of the reasons for putting the strap in between the legs and pulling backwards is that this decreases the likelihood of the animal rolling instead of sliding. So we don't want it to roll. Then there's going to be hooves going towards everyone's head if the animal is rolling. And also we don't want to get any torsions going on with the animal's gut. So this is an option as far as putting the straps in between the legs. You can, of course, I think in the next slide. So in this case, they didn't do that. We're going to slide this animal just a short distance onto a rescue slide. And again, this way you can pull them out, use it for cast animals as far as doing the side drag. If you have an animal that is down and just can't rescue itself, so it's injured or it's emaciated, you can use a rescue glide. So they make professional rescue glides, which are PVC. But you can also use heavy plywood, a sheet of heavy plywood, get the animal on it, strap the animal down, and then be sure to protect the head So some type of vest or something that's going to go up over the animal's head with it. In this case, you need to strap the animal down well. This animal needs to be heavily sedated because they are not going to, even if they're injured or ill or for whatever reason, the reason that they're down, they will struggle. So they must be heavily sedated to be able to use a rescue glide. And just a couple more things because we're running out of time here, but a ditch rescue. So again, if we're lifting animals, there are a lot of options for that. You don't need a helicopter necessary to lift an animal. Again, talking with your firefighters, this is an A-frame that firefighters use for lifting people typically out of situations. It is all man-controlled, so there's people on either ends of that. So no mechanisms, no engines necessary. So we have animals down in some type of a hole. We can use a system like this. And this is a well-trained llama being pulled out of its ditch. And I mentioned a stretcher bar before. So this is basically, it's just a four-sided steel square that has carriage bolts in it that you can connect the lift mechanism to. And then the pulley is connected to the stretcher bar. And the idea is that we're not taking these two pieces of equipment and putting them to one point where would end up putting a lot of pressure on the animal's back. We've got them on a stretcher bar so they stay separated. And the idea when lifting an upright animal is that we put it, again, one in the cinch area and one in front of the back legs. And then animals tend to be either front heavy or back heavy. So for front heavy species like llamas and horses, you would put a front cinch on. So just going around the chest and on the other side to support that. For our cows are butt heavy, so we need to put a cinch around the butt so they don't slide out backwards, which would be terribly embarrassing for the rescuers and result in poor welfare for the animals. This is a case in Switzerland, I think it is, where they were needing to evacuate a village because of a concern for mudslides. And so they evacuated the 300 people and all the assorted animals through normal routes, except for this cow who had some type of injury and couldn't go with everybody else. So they actually airlifted the cow out of the village to get her to a safe place. So you see here a slightly different version of the lift. It's not 2 cinches, it's one big web, but they do have that butt cinch on her connected to the web. And it looks like they've also got something going up to the front just to keep her well balanced, and she's hanging from a helicopter having the ride of her life. And she must be an incredibly valuable cow because that's expensive, but good for them. And finishing up here, just touching on these other emergencies. If an animal's in mud, you can't dig them out. They will just sink deeper, and you must release the suction from the mud at the same time that you attempt pulling the animal. If you don't release the suction, you're going to, there's the potential of ripping the hooves off as you get the animal out, but not the hooves. And again, firefighters are trained in doing this for people, so they have the ability to either shoot in air or shoot in water to break that seal and get the animals out in one piece. If animals are exposed to fire, assume that that animal is on fire, whether or not you see smoke, whether or not the animal's acting painful, hose them all down and assume they're on fire, so under their hair, because they may be, it's just hard to tell from observation. Animals will return to burning buildings because that's where they feel safe. So we must keep those animals contained, similar to a trailer accident, where we want to have good fencing or have the animals haltered and someone holding them. Understanding that PVC fencing may melt if it's close enough to the barn. So putting them in a PVC fenced area may not solve the solution because it may just disappear and melt away, and the animals are going back into the barn. Nylon halters and ropes may melt from the heat, so that's a concern from the welfare, again, of the horses that we may be getting burns from the halters. Animals in water, only responders trained in water rescue should go into water. So no matter how much you want to help, Do not enter water unless you have been trained in how to do that. It's extremely dangerous. And we also have to keep in mind, so our job on scene would be to remind any water rescuer that the animals may be trapped in something. They might be trapped in barbed wire, they might be trapped just in junk if they've been washed down. So again, if you're trying to get an animal out and it's not moving and you're wondering why is this animal not coming out, it may be that its legs are entrapped and we just can't see that because it's down underwater. So some acknowledgements for the information, especially the training from 2008. There's an excellent book, Technical Large Animal Emergency Rescue by the Gimenezes. That is an excellent resource. And again, the book and the website for Technical Large Animal Emergency Rescue. Also Nature's Way Rescue and Rehabilitation's information there. And again, the information on the Indiana Board of Animal Health's Animal Disaster Course. And this is a load of bees being taken wherever loads of bees go. So we have to be mindful they are also out there on the roads with us. And do not bump the rail. Apparently, bad idea. Going to make the bees very unhappy. All right. That is what I have and ready for questions.
Thank you so much for this fantastic presentation. While she goes ahead and takes a quick break for water, this is the ideal time to submit any comments or questions that you have into the chat section, and we will do our best to answer any of the questions or or address any comments. I know that someone has had their hand up. Greg, we can turn your mic on if you have a question. We have a question. What email would you like us to send the PD request to, Mary? Just to clarify, PD. She'll go ahead and type that in the chat for you. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, so if you want continuing education credit, go ahead and email to animalhealth@boa.in.gov. And you can receive continuing education credit for this webinar via email. That'll come in the coming weeks. And if you called in, please also let us know if you joined, and we will send you your certificate. Go ahead and email Animal Health again at boa.in.gov. There's a question, will there be another all-day seminar at the fairgrounds as there was 15 to 20 years ago? We could look into that for sure. It all depends on if there is interest, how much interest, and funding. And all right, thank you all for attending this wonderful presentation. We thank again Dr. Lovejoy for her presentation, and thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day.